just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday, you said tomorrow, so just do it! Make your dreams come true! Just do it!
Welcome to Successful Dropout. This podcast is for the outliers, the innovators, the rebels, those that dare to dream and act on their dreams. I'm your host, Kylan Ginger. Join me as we find out what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. How's it going, everybody? I've got some pretty exciting news. If you listen to the podcast much, you know we've been building a pretty vibrant community of truly extraordinary people who have committed to an unconventional route through life. The Successful Dropout audience has been growing a lot, and I get a lot of people reaching out to me now with all sorts of questions regarding education, dropping out, opting out, entrepreneurship, resources, networking, etc. So much so that I decided it was time to create a more accessible community on Facebook so that we can all ask and answer these kinds of questions together, as well as celebrate our successes and encourage each other during inevitable adversity. So I've created a closed Facebook group, and I want to invite you to join it. If you follow Successful Dropout, if you resonate with our philosophy and want to help me grow this thriving community, go to successfuldropout.com/group. This community is for the rebels, the outliers, the innovators, the doers, and those who dare to dream and act on their dreams. If you're a dropout, an opt-out, if you're thinking about doing one of those things, if you're a parent, even if you aren't any of those things and you graduated school, I want to invite you to join. All that matters is that you resonate with the Successful Dropout philosophy and that you enter the group with the intention to provide value to the other members and not just receive value yourself. Again, go to successfuldropout.com/group to request admission. Once you're a part of the group, introduce yourself and get involved, and I'll see you there. What is up, Successful Dropouts? Get stoked because today on the show we have Cameron. Now, Cameron reached out to me a few weeks ago via email just to sort of share his story, and then he joined the Facebook group and shared his story there. And after I got to know a little bit more about him, I felt like I had to get this guy on the show and chat and hear the rest of his story. A phenomenal dude. He's 18 years old. He's already built a couple different 7-figure companies. He's doing really well. He has sort of an unconventional entrepreneurial journey and schooling journey that I can't wait to get into with you guys. And just an all-around badass guy. I had a great time chatting with him and would love to have him on the show again sometime. And very wise and accomplished beyond his years already. But he does a great job sort of laying out some of the reasons why he is where he is right now. And so my hope is that you guys can pick up on this stuff and learn something through this episode. So without further ado, I will turn it over to the conversation. Here we go. Cameron?
Hey, Colin, how are you?
Hey, living the dream, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm excited to be doing this.
Right on, man. Right on. Where are you calling from?
Highland Park, northern suburb, 30 minutes outside of Chicago.
30 minutes out? Oh, dang. Chicago. I was there for a while in boot camp in the Navy once. It's a really neat city.
Yeah, it's awesome. Going to the Cubs game tonight. I'm excited about that.
Right on. I bet it's getting super frigid up there, too.
Honestly, with everything that's going on right now in the world, it's like 65 today.
No way.
It's like I enjoy it because it's warm out, but I'm not sure that it's what's best for our planet.
Yeah, well, that's a good point too. My God, I remember the last time I was there. Yeah, it was around fall, winter, and it would just get so cold.
Yeah,
and of course,
yeah.
Now we're up in. I live up in central Washington at a place called Snoqualmie Pass. So it's basically up in the mountains. We live in a lodge up here, kind of in the woods, and we're just starting to get some snow and stuff like that. So
I'm excited for the snow.
Yeah, I'm getting stoked. Do you do any skiing or snowboarding? I suppose there's probably not. Is there?
There's nothing over here, but my aunt lives on the mountain in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. So it's a $200 round trip. Plane ticket away, so gonna head down there pretty soon. When my sister has a 3-day weekend, she's a sophomore in high school, she's a junior now. Yeah, wow, that's weird. So she's a junior now in high school. So when she has a 3-day weekend, we're gonna go down there to go skiing.
Right on, man. I've been to Steamboat Springs. My wife has family that's right around that area, but it's a really beautiful place up there.
Yeah,
And
the mountains north. It's awesome out there. I love it.
yeah, seriously. Yeah, we do a ton of snowboarding, skiing here too. We just bit the bullet and got season passes for this year, and we're about 20 minutes away from the ski hill, so I can get on like a phone call like this and step out the door, and in 20 minutes like be on top of this double black diamond and just hang up and
That's the life.
board down the mountain. Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
That's awesome.
I'm not gonna lie. Well, this is awesome, man. It's great to get you on the show.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited.
Who's John Jones? Is this a celebrity
So-
I don't know about?
When I probably have like over 1,000 contacts on this. So when I first started, which I could talk a little bit on the show, I started by literally just putting my Skype on forums, going on freelancer websites. So I would have, in the old days, like 50 just random Indian developers add me who I had no idea who they were. And I just thought, I mean, it's probably gotten to the point where I should make a legitimate Skype, but John Jones it's funny. Everyone that I've worked with just know. I mean, there's tons of people that I've worked with that literally think my name is John, because a lot of my partner are developers overseas kind of thing. So, yeah, that's a good call on your part. I should probably fix that.
I got the notification on Skype. I'm like, John Jones, that's cool. I get it though. I mean, I talk with people all over the world on Skype. Like I'm on Skype pretty much 90% of the day.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking with like a million different people and trying to keep all the names and contacts straight all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I hear you on
I
that.
would probably make a separate Skype for legitimate things like this.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, well, sweet, man. Well, ever since you posted on the Facebook group, so you posted on the Facebook group, and it was a great long post. I was reading it. I was like, wow, this kid is doing some awesome stuff. And then I remembered that you actually emailed me. In fact, I think you might have mentioned it in the comments or something like that, and it jogged my memory. I was like, oh yeah, because I get a lot of emails, and so sometimes I can't get to them all in a day, so I'll like leave them unread, and I'll come back on like a weekend or something and answer everything. And yours happened to be one of those, and so I went back and I was like, oh yeah, you reached out to me earlier.
You mentioned the link to the Facebook group in your first response, I think. So I decided to go. I mean, I've been looking for communities like this, and now I just heard of this. I was talking to Sivava or Sivana or something. I forgot what her name was. I talked with her this morning, and she told me that she met you at the Next Gen conference and stuff like that. So these are all new. All my success in the business world has come from just building my network as large as I can with developers, since everything I do is in the tech startup space. So I've never really needed to network in my life to help excel my business, just because, I mean, I raised money privately kind of thing. Like everything I was doing was working well on my own, but I'm realizing whether or not it'll help my current business, I can use this business that has had a ton of success to grow my network for future businesses kind of thing. So I'm a little bit late. I wish I would have started doing it earlier, but I do see a lot of success. I see a ton of people on all these podcasts and stuff like that who are great. I feel like I have a different kind of story to bring. I mean, there's a lot of influencers and stuff like that, and good. I mean, good for them. They've done their job branding their personal pages and stuff like that. But I feel like I have somewhat of a unique story that I can bring. I mean, the whole reason I've gotten into business, which I posted on the Facebook group, was the main thing was I wanted to change the public school system, and I didn't know how. I just knew that if I had money, it'd be a lot easier than not having money trying to make a change. So that's why I got into this. And then the second thing is just more, it kind of is what the next gen thing is. I want to start, you know what hackathons are for the developers?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to do something. I mean, there might already be something out there. I haven't looked a ton into it, but I want to do something like a hackathon type concept with business kids, whether or not, I mean, I thought like a 1-week summer camp, stuff like that, when kids have free time, but just a time. I like the concept of bringing people together using like dating site algorithms of pairing people who would work well with each other based off of algorithms we put together, and then just giving them 24 hours to do as much as they can, which would then also let me lead into angel investing, which is something I want to do, finding the best group of guys who mesh together really well, find cool products, invest in them. I just think seeing how I've been able to do well in the business world being a young kid, I feel like a lot of, I mean, kids just think differently. Like growing up with Facebook and stuff like that, that was normal for me. So using social media, not paying for ads was what I thought was the normal thing, when for adults, that's like, what are you doing? Like paying for video ads, like Google ads, that's the way to go kind of thing. So it's just, I feel like naturally kids just have a different perception on things because of what they grow up with.
That's interesting, because more that they've grown, which by the way, I have, as far as hackathons go, I can put you in touch with a couple different people. We've had Zach Latta on the show, who's a Teal fellow, and he started, I can't remember the name of it now, but it's essentially a hacking club, basically, that's nationwide. Now they're in like 600 high schools, but it's for specifically high schoolers, and helping them launch the club, and they do hackathons and all sorts of stuff.
That's awesome.
I can definitely hook you up with some people.
Great, thank you.
So are you saying it's because like kids nowadays, like they've grown up with social media as just a part of their lives, so it's more second nature? They're not thinking like, oh, I've got to go out and spend $500 on a campaign to make this thing work, that they already sort of intuitively know how to make it work. They just need to maybe apply it to a larger goal or business idea or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the coolest thing for me was having I love looking back at the time when I started, because I had no money. It had to be creative kind of thing. So there's, I mean, with social media, there are tons of free ways to market yourself. And there are tons of ways to come. I mean, back in 2014, when Instagram was a lot more lenient, they didn't have as many rules set in place to stop automated programs. I literally paid a freelancer $100 to make a script that just I made 10 fake accounts, and then I would go to my 10 biggest competitors, scrape all of their followers. So you could do that through their API. I had a database of like hundreds of thousands of users, and I would just run these on. So I didn't want my main account to be doing any automation to be safe. So I would use the 10 fake accounts that were branded around my main account, just tagging 4 people on each account would tag 4 people on my picture every second. So I'm tagging 40 people a second kind of thing. And they had no spam filters, nothing. So I was literally gaining, I think at the time I was gaining 1,000 followers a day, all real organic. And that's literally what started it. And I wish I would have realized what I had, because I would have just made 1,000 Instagram accounts that would have been worth a lot of money today, just monopolize a ton of stuff.
God.
But I mean, it's just, that's the best part. Like, that's what I love about kids in the entrepreneurship world, because I didn't know that nowadays that would be, like, I didn't read the rules. I didn't see whether or not accounts could get banned for stuff like that. It's just like when a baby's 2 years old and they fall and they hurt their arm, like they didn't know that could happen. That's literally, or like when, I love the concept of like when I stick a toy under my couch or something and my dog's trying to get it. Like they figure out all these creative ways to get it, because there's no not getting that toy. So for me, I was going to get customers. I just didn't know how to do it, which led me not knowing how to not do it. So I just tried a bunch of random stuff.
I love that progression, not knowing how to not do it. I mean, yeah. So you're saying you have this sort of really unique message where you're coming at it from a person that you didn't learn like all the right ways to do it. Like you didn't know the right ways to do it. You didn't have, your mind wasn't confined to any sort of preconceived notions or systems that you may have picked up from somewhere. It was sort of unfettered. Yeah,
for sure. I think that's a great way of putting it.
Man, and so how old are you now?
I'm 18.
18. That's incredible, and you've already accomplished so much.
Thank you.
So if you haven't been able to tell already, we've already started the interview. Yeah, man, it's just I just want to have a conversation and chat, ask you questions, and just hear your story and stuff. I mean, you're talking to people you want to talk to. The majority of our audience, they're 16 to 25 years old, high school, college students, all interested in doing and thinking unconventionally. I would say the big difference between a lot of our listeners and maybe you is that did you grow up in the public school system, I guess? Were you a part of that at all, or were you homeschooled or something?
I went to Montessori schools until about 6th grade, and then I switched over into public school. So from 6th grade until sophomore year, I was in public schools, and then halfway through sophomore year, that's when I decided to make the transition to homeschooling.
Oh my gosh. So you went from Montessori schools to then regular, like public school, and then to homeschooling? That was the progression?
Yeah, kind of went back and forth.
Yeah, interesting. So, I mean, it's similar to I was homeschooled most of my life and then went to basically a regular school. It was a private school, but that, basically a regular school, and was in that sort of atmosphere for 2 years of high school. It's definitely, I feel like probably the majority of people listening they either come from some sort of regular schooling background or public schooling background, or started there and then maybe switched to homeschooling or something like that. I feel like maybe some people like you and I have had the advantage of growing up a different way, where you weren't really confined to any sort of box at an early age, and so you sort of intuitively understand that even when you end up going to like public school, like I did later, like you did later. I feel like the majority of our listeners aren't quite like that, so it definitely makes sense that you would your whole basis for starting businesses would be to change the public school system. So I'd be curious to hear, like, when you did go from Montessori learning, first of all, maybe explain what that is for people who don't know, and what was that like? What were your thoughts, and maybe a story or something of that, what that transition was like, going from that kind of environment after you explain that, and then to public school? I think that would have been a shock.
Yeah, for sure. So Montessori, I mean, first off, I was extremely fortunate enough. I mean, Montessori schools are expensive. So I was fortunate enough to have my parents being able to afford that at the time. So that's one thing that I just kind of got lucky with. So the concept of the Montessori school I went to was there 3 grades per class. So my class, the last class I was in, was 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So there was one teacher in the class, and the whole concept was get as much done as you possibly can. There's no set limit. There's no get unit 4 done by tonight. It's get as much as you possibly can done. There's no holding the students back. So there were a lot of things that happened indirectly, which we didn't even realize at the time. Like, before you could ask the teacher of the class a question, you would have to go to the 5th grader in the class, because they've been through it, and that teaches the 5th grader leadership skills already, and you're learning to ask questions to people that aren't necessarily in the authority figure place. So there were a lot of cool things that were happening that we weren't even aware. I mean, we had recess for an hour every day, which I think is huge, going outside, seeing the real world, not being stuck in the school all day kind of thing.
Right.
And we were lucky enough to have a couple of acres of prairie. So we literally had a full economic system going, with acorns being the money system. And you would build forts, you could buy and sell items for the fort. I mean, these are things at the time that were just fun and games. And you're just learning economic lessons firsthand without even realizing what's happening. And looking back, it was so genius the way they set it up. But at the time, I'm just a 7-year-old, 10-year-old having fun in the prairie, finding 5 acorns on the floor, or doing a little bit of work for acorns to be able to buy something to make my fort better. It's just all these simple things that it's literally just the business world, but at a different level. And it was, all the math was done hands-on. So rather than memorizing a formula, you're actually understanding why 5 + 5 = 10 kind of thing. You're seeing it happen on the board and understanding that. So with all those,
not to mention in your acorn transactions, you really want to know your math, so you're not getting shystered or something.
Yeah, exactly. So with the transition then going into public school, I was testing. I mean, my math skills were my strongest asset in school. So when I left Montessori, my math skills, I think, were 3 grades above my level. And I didn't know how to do many things on paper, but I would always get the right answer in my head because I understand what was happening and knew how to process it. But going into the public school, it's all about showing your work. So I quickly got held back and moved down to a lower math class because I didn't know how to show my work, but I kept on getting the right answers. But I actually understood why these things were happening in my head rather than just looking at a piece of paper and memorizing.
You weren't just a drone going like step by step, here's the system. You actually understood the why behind the concepts.
Exactly. And I mean, we are all just, when we're growing up, when we're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, well, like I said earlier, when we fall down and you hurt your arm because we're running too quickly, you realize why that happened. We're just programming our brains at a young age. So being able to grow up in the Montessori platform helped program. I mean, I think that's led to a ton of my success. So
Totally.
the reason I'm not exactly sure yet how I can implement Montessori to large scale, because it is, I mean, to have a private to have all these things happening, for the school to have all that prairie, all the acres, you have to pay a lot of money to go to those schools. So I think the main reason a ton of people don't go is just because it is too expensive for a lot of families to afford. So I have to figure out, my mission is my task is how to figure out a way to make it cost beneficial and still have a lot of the advantages that it brings.
Yeah. I'm right with you there, man, and maybe it's something that we can chat about in the future moving forward, because it's my great passion as well, is to just change the way people think about education and entrepreneurship and where the two intersect. And a lot of that starts very early on at an earlier age, even before high school, and looking at the public school and saying, how can we do this differently? It's so. I love the acorn story, man, though, because I do remember being about 7 years old, and I was homeschooled. But and the only sort of thing that I had that was anywhere close to public school was a public a daycare that my parents would drop me off at when my mom would go to work out. And so she dropped me off there, and I remember specifically, very similar to your story. Do you remember? I don't know if you ever played with their like Legos, but just a giant version of Legos.
Yeah, the big one.
And you could, the big Legos. And then there was also the play, like big plastic playhouses. I kind of commandeered one of those and built this massive wall of these Legos all around it. I essentially built a castle in the daycare, and I remember charging kids like a toy. They'd have to bring me like a toy, and I would either like it or not like it, and then they could get into this club, and then I'd give them roles, like you're a guard, you have to sit outside the gate and like question people and get their payment before they can come in, like you're in here like making us a feast or something imaginary like that. I got in a lot of trouble for that, actually. And I was banned from playing. I remember being banned from playing with the blocks specifically.
You
like trying to pick them up later, like in the week, and the babysitter, whoever's watching the daycare, would come over and be like, "You're not allowed to play with those anymore." It's just great. I can definitely relate, man. It's so. And I remember all the other kids they were looking at me like I was crazy. Like, this is, but at the same time, they wanted to be a part of it. Like, it was this new, exciting thing. It was out of the ordinary, outside of the box. And I didn't know to think any different. I didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's so
I mean,
cool.
when you're looking back at you start realizing some of the things that run businesses. And I mean, the supply and demand kind of thing. If I'm the one with the coolest stick in the forest, I know people are going to be willing to pay more for it. And if person A says I'll pay 5 acorns, person B says 6 acorns, I realize that I could have a bit. I mean, these are just simple things at the time that, because of how natural they felt at the time when I didn't know what was going on, I think that's also helped me a ton in the business world. The day I got into business, I already realized a lot of the main concepts that are so big in business today that just helped me get right into things right away.
Yeah, and you soak so much more up at a young age too, and so those must have been really solidified. Man, yeah, incredible
for sure. Thank you.
So I want to take a little bit of a step away from this story for a second. Do you watch any Netflix?
Yeah.
What do you watch?
Breaking Bad is my favorite show of all time. I watched the Bitcoin documentary recently.
Oh, the one on Netflix, like the main one?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I watched it like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I watched it about the same amount of time ago too, and that was amazing. Are you into crypto then?
Yeah, I have a lot of money in crypto.
I bet. That's great. I'm keeping an eye on we've got the Swell conference over in Toronto this week with Ripple, and keeping an eye on a bunch of different stuff. So Breaking Bad on Netflix. That's a phenomenal show. Do you play any video games?
Yeah, I play some sports games with my friends and stuff like that when I get free time.
Right on. So this free time you talk of, how much of that are we talking about?
It really, right now my biggest company I've delegated a lot of the work to employees so I can focus on managing. What I like to do is I like to start companies, get them to the point where I can hire a manager to kind of run them. So free time right now on the weekends, I'm just visiting friends, going to visit them at college and stuff like that, just to have fun on the weekends. And then during the weeks. Two of my companies have residency at Northwestern's entrepreneurship program, so I don't take any classes there, but I'm able to use their facilities and their network for my businesses to grow with mentors, stuff like that. So free time kind of looks like past 10, 11 p.m. on weeknights. But I like working late as well. So it's kind of being homeschooled, it's your own schedule. So I work on business when I need to, and when I'm not, I'll just play around, kind of have fun. I have friends who are home and stuff like that too. So I just like to relax when I'm not working on business.
Yeah, right on. So you're not like some superhuman adolescent entrepreneur that works an insane amount of hours and never watches Netflix.
I was at the start. I mean, I used to be pulling all-nighters every single week and stuff like that to get my company to the point where it is today.
Right.
But I mean, you learn as you go. I've been able to automate a lot of the things that I do, and now I like to. I mean, before I was literally handling the customer service. I was doing everything for my business. And now that it's gotten to a point where we can afford a full-time employee, where it helps the business grow kind of thing, I think putting in all those hours in the beginning has allowed me to get to the point where now I can spend my time focusing on new businesses.
So that systems aspect, delegating and hiring employees and having, sort of transferable systems and skills across businesses, was that something you sort of naturally picked up on? Because I find a lot of people who start businesses don't. They just kind of just do everything by themselves forever, and they wonder why they can't grow or scale. Is that something you eventually picked up on, or did you have like resources or a mentor or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I just realized that I was holding my company back by not bringing someone on to help with the work. The customer service stuff was getting to the point where we were getting 500, 1,000 inquiries a day, where I'm replying to all those, and the business isn't. I mean, it's growing by word of mouth, but it's not. I mean, what got the business to where it is was me doing the life hack things on these social media accounts. So I realized that I wasn't having time for that anymore, and a lot of my day was being spent on customer service, so that delegating work allowed me to go back to the fundamentals of what helped the business grow and get back to doing that.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so you've started a few businesses, maybe more than that, and they've all been obviously successful. So maybe take us through the progression here. I think you mentioned that you started your first business at 14. I guess what was that? And let's kind of briefly go through the progression, and then maybe we can go back and touch on each one and go a little bit deeper.
So my first business, I was on my city's basketball team. So our jerseys were pretty cool, and I knew this guy who ran a custom sock apparel website. So they were $20 for custom socks. You could get your initials on your number, and then we got our city's logo. So I got those for $20. I sold them to my whole team for what I paid, the $20, and then I had 20 extra that I bought, and I just sold to kids at school for $40. So I just simply started realizing simple lessons there. It was just create a product that people wanted, thought was cool. I'm pretty sure that was the only and the last time I ever did a physical product where the shoe thing, which I'll touch on a little bit, is different because it's a service I'm offering, so I'm not handling the goods. But I didn't even think, I've been really big on only doing tech stuff. So it's funny looking back, realizing that the thing that funded my first project was actually a physical product.
So why just tech stuff, really quick?
It's really easy to, number one, cost. You don't need, if you're smart with your money, you use your resources. Every company I've started, I don't try to build the product I think I'll need a year from now for all my customers. I build my product for having one customer kind of thing. So a new project that I'm starting, which I'm really excited about, our budget was $1,000, nothing more. And once we start growing, I have the money, I could put more into it kind of thing, but I like setting that tight budget, because one thing that if I'm starting a company within a month or 2 months of starting the company, if it hasn't made any money or I don't see the potential, I scrap it. I just move on to the next thing. So having a small budget for projects allows me to have a lot of trial and error with things to see if it'll really be as successful as I think it is. And if it is, then I can pour more money into it. But I like keeping my track record pretty successful because of the fact that I want to get into angel investing. I want to be able to show later on that any company that I've worked on for more than 3 months has been profitable kind of thing.
Right. Okay. Okay, so then after the sock sort of product based business, what then?
Then I started getting into the sneakers. So I had one lucky break, which I think everything happens for a reason kind of thing. Have you ever heard of penny bidding websites?
I have not. No.
So it's the same concept as eBay, except you essentially buy your bids. So items go for a lot cheaper because you're paying 60 cents for a bid, but it's essentially gambling. So being 14 at the time, thinking I can rule the world, I got into this gambling site and I got very lucky and I won a pair of $300 sneakers for $12.
Dang.
Yeah, so that was a huge eye opener. I had one friend who was into sneakers at the time who kind of told me I should get into it, and then seeing this and actually selling the item. And I remember the feeling right after I sold them for $300. I called my dad. I had the money in my wallet. I was just freaking out. So I quickly realized I needed to find a way to get into this business. So I just started not knowing what I was doing. I had a mall across the street from where I lived. I would bring my mom, my sister, my dad with me to the mall to camp out at 5 a.m. to wait 4 hours to buy a pair of shoes for $200 that I could sell for $250 just to start scrapping together money in any way I could. And after doing that for about a month or so, I saw that the shoes were releasing online. So I went manually one time, bought the shoes. I was like, wow, that worked well, but there has to be an easier way to do this. So randomly I come across a Facebook video of a Chrome extension that people are using that will add the shoe to your cart for you and then bring it to your cart, and then you'll manually check out. So it just clicked the size and added it. But that was everything back then. That 1-2 second difference is what there was a difference between the shoe selling out and you getting the shoe. So I saw the company that this guy was running, and every release he was selling out of slots. And I realized, I mean, the one thing we can't control is the stock that the sites release. But if you're selling a tech service, you should be able to supply kind of like an unlimited supply of it because there's no physical backing to it. So I found the guy's website. I found a video of his product. I made a post in a freelancer group. And then, again, I got lucky. I said, I'm looking for this exact product. And the actual guy who developed that project hit me up. So that was another extremely lucky break. So from there, I started my first sneaker service company, which was a place where customers would pay me per release or per month to use the system. And they would go to the page of the product, and when it released, it would just add it to the cart for them, and they would check out.
Interesting. So did you start this business with the guy who you originally found online who had a similar one? Or?
So I found a company online that did what I wanted to do, and then I posted a video of what they did, and I don't know how, but I somehow found their developer who made their service, and he said he could make me
a similar service. I see.
Yeah.
I see. So, and it's a sneaker bot service essentially. I think that's what you called it.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So I've never heard of that before at all. But I mean, I guess so. The benefit is that if I sign up for your service, I'm able to get like an exclusive pair of sneakers. I don't have to worry about basically being on time or them selling out before I'm able to get to it. That sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. So. Back then, obviously, you would still have to do manual work. The bot would add it to your cart, and then you would check out. So as that company kind of grew, I started growing my network of developers. And I mean, one big kind of life lesson I learned through this whole thing, my top 3 developers that I still work with today have come from people that were, very small people in my network. I had one freelancer that I paid $100 to do a project, and then he referred me to this guy. And since then, I've been working with this guy for 3 years. So one big lesson that I learned very early on was value every single person in your network the same kind of thing. Like, you don't know who knows who right. can bring what to the table kind of thing. So looking back, from my 2 top developers that I work with today, one was referred by a freelancer that I didn't know that I did a $100 project with, and the other one was a customer who just used to buy a couple slots here and there, and he just referred me to this developer. So holding that kind of value with everyone I work with and realizing that anyone can bring something like that to the table has helped me grow my network of developers extremely well.
No, I absolutely hear with that. People who've been following the show have found out that one of the very first people I ever interviewed when I started this podcast over a year ago reached out to me just a few months ago. And long story short, I've joined his team of online investors, and I'm now sort of a contract CEO, and I'm managing one of the companies that we've acquired. And the founder of that company, well, first of all, the company happens to be it's an online community, happens to be exactly what I'm trying to build with Successful Dropout. And then the founder is essentially the guy to talk to, like, and I have him sort of on retainer right now because he still owns a portion of the company he built that he sold, to us. And so it's like a relationship gave me another relationship, which gave me another relationship, which is like right in line with what I'm trying to actually build. And it's only because it's only because you stepped out there and you start making relationships in the first place, treat people well, stay in touch, and also, provide value. I provided this guy originally with a platform to sort of share his message, and it's turned into this. So
so now what I'm doing is I'm going back with everyone that I've ever worked with. I've been doing this recently and making different categories of people and filling out what they did for me, their name, their contact information. Because if you were to ask me for other people who are in the sneaker space and stuff like that, I could probably refer you to a lot of people. So and it's going to be rare that you find someone who thinks that they are the best at what they do. So by hitting these people up, if I need another job in a certain space, I look back at who I've worked with. I just say, hey, do you know anyone who could do that? Can you do this for me? Do you know anyone else who you've worked with? It's just really, if you're in the space of web development, you're going to know other web developers. And if you say you need a big project, they'll probably refer you to one of your bigger guys. So it's just one thing that has helped me a lot has just been keeping track of the people that I've worked with and going back to them in the future for anything you need, because it's hard to find good starting off, a lot of the developers still today that I work with I've never met in real life. They're all overseas kind of thing. So it's important to find guys you can really trust and keep well connected with them.
Right. Absolutely. So is this like a spreadsheet that you're building?
Yeah. So I just have different categories of web developers. Other developers, guys who have helped with marketing, stuff like that. And then just say what they did, how well they did it for me, and then their contact information. So when I know what my next project is, I can see what it relates to most that I've done in the past and then go reach out to them.
Yeah, that's, for people listening, that would be a great habit to get into. Two other things that are coming to mind along the same lines are, we do have in the Successful Dropout group, we have a spreadsheet that people are adding their info to, so you can go check there if you need help with, something. Chances are there's somebody on there who can connect you or help you. And then one habit that I've started to get into is actually when I do meet somebody and I import them into my contacts, there's usually a spot for notes in your contacts, and every app I've used for contacts, that note section can go on and on and on. There's no text limit, and so every time I'm talking with them, I put the date, and then I put like little blurbs about our conversation or what we did together or what they're doing for me, stuff like that. So at any point, if I, of course, you have to be able to remember the name and who, what industry they're associated with, but then you can go back and see sort of the history of the relationship, and that's also helped me a lot. So that's a little hack for people to throw in there.
It's really smart.
So then, okay, so the first sneaker bot service, what company was that? What was that called?
That was called Soul Sniper.
Soul Sniper, okay. And then the next was Soul Strike?
Soul Snatcher was after that.
Soul Snatcher.
So,
and then you mentioned you raised some money for that as well?
That was, I'll get in, so I'll just keep going in order of the things I've worked on. So after the big difference between Soul Sniper and Soul Snatcher was we moved, rather than you adding the item to your cart and then checking out, we fully automated the experience. So I partnered up with a guy from New York who was growing his follower base, and we just decided to merge our two companies. So the way it worked with this company is, rather, like I said before, you doing stuff on your own, customers would give us their credit card, their address, their email, all of their information needed to check out on the website, and we would go in and actually check the items out for them. So they could, it was really cool because people didn't need to wake up anymore the releases used to be at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning. So if you're in California kind of thing, that's 5 a.m. That gets really early. So let people sleep in. Now there's a lot of weekday releases, so people who are working can't do it. It makes the experience fully automated and extremely easy for the customer. They just go in, they put their information in. If the service was successful, we charge them the service fee. If it was unsuccessful for any reason, we would just go ahead and refund what they paid for the service fee. So it was essentially no risk.
Right.
So what helped us kind of take that industry over was we started looking for ways to stand out. So one company we merged off of that, which was called So Much Soul. A lot of these sites had cart holds. So when you added the product to your cart, you had 10 minutes to check out kind of thing. So along with doing the auto checkout, there were obviously customers on release day who tried doing it on their own, wanted to run maybe their own bot that they made, stuff like that. So there were people who weren't ordering from us who still wanted the shoes. So with So Much Soul, the way it worked is we would run an extra couple thousand tasks a release just for the carts, and then we had an API linking to our website. So when the item added to cart, the customer could actually buy the cart off of our website and manually check out. So that was something that no one had done at the time, and some of the biggest guys in the game are doing that today. So it's kind of cool seeing how big that's gotten. It gave us a chance to still get customers during because there would be releases where they'd release 1,000 pairs. Let's say we had 200 orders. We fulfilled those 200 orders, and there's still 800 pairs out there. So we wanted to take all the pieces of the pie kind of thing.
Right. That's great. Okay, so then that was Soul Snatcher, right? Okay. I'm trying to keep track of all the soul names.
Yeah, so the third soul, which is called Soul Strike, was I started that with the customer service employee who ran Soul Snatcher. He thought that he could build a bigger one with his network of sneaker people, and I was all for it. I was going to handle the technology side like the other one. So we started that, and the biggest difference from the other companies was having multiple full-time customer service guys. Our biggest thing was the customer experience. Customers are giving us their credit card and stuff like that. In the past, we used to reply to customers in the morning, and then at night when we got time. We always had a guy replying to people, managing stuff, making the customers really feel valued, which we didn't do a good enough job in the past. And it was just, we would be the first ones to have refunds done over the other companies. We started something called the 2-for-1. So we started running customers. A lot of times these shoes are going to sell. So on a Yeezy shoe that retails at $200, it'll sell for $500-600. So we started running customer slots multiple times at no extra charge, which gave us a better chance at hitting more orders, which made us more money. And then it also gave the customer a chance at hitting more pairs, which would make them more money reselling their shoes in the secondary market. So just small things like that. It was also great timing. We came into the market at somewhat of a bad time. So a lot of companies were just dropping out, and we just stayed consistent with it, did everything we could to keep our reputation as high as it could. And I've been doing that for a little over a year now, and that company's done well over $2 million in sales. So that's been crazy.
That's phenomenal. And so again, which one was that?
That's Soul Strike.
Soul Strike. Okay. And then Shoe Snatcher is the next one, and that's where you raise some capital.
Yeah, that's just the name of the business. We don't really have we sell all. Yeah, so that was a project where we raised money through angel investing, and there, like I said before, there was still, when we'd have 200 orders for a shoe that had 1,000 pairs in stock, there were still extra pairs out there. And a lot of times these shoes sell for a lot of money. So there would be releases. Now we could expand to other regions and stuff like that, Europe, China, all these other places that released the shoes where the competition level was a lot easier. So we just set up shipping facilities in those regions and started running for thousands of shoes. We were missing out on that big. We had the U.S. customers down, but our Europe customer base wasn't there, and there were just pairs going to waste. Because, for instance, Adidas is a European-based company, so they're going to release the same amount, if not more, pairs of these limited shoes in Europe just because that's where they started, kind of thing. So it was just we saw a lot of pairs going to waste that were selling for $300-400 profits on the secondary market. So we decided to do that, to start going for shoes over there.
Gotcha. So at the very beginning, when you started the first sort of service, so now we've kind of heard a quick overview of your story. Obviously very successful. You've done very well, and you'll probably continue to do a lot more. But now for people listening, like I'm sure it sounds like you're extremely passionate about helping others sort of attain these same sort of results, maybe just in whatever else they decide to do. Maybe starting a business isn't even for them, or at least not in this industry. So some people would look at what you've done and even where you started and just say, you know, there's a high barrier to entry there. Like when you started your first bot service, when you found the guy who created the same service and you were like, I want to create something basically the exact same thing. I mean, where were you getting the money to do that? What were some of the barriers you had to overcome, and how can others do the same?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to, I saved up allowance, things that were in my house that I weren't using anymore. I would sell it. If I had 3 video games that I wasn't using anymore, that's $50-$60 right there. You could sell them on eBay. Right. I think the hardest part about running a business is just getting started. It's that fear of how am I going to do this? It's taking the concept of the dog with the toy under the couch. They're going to figure out a way to get it. They're going to try a bunch of different things. If you have that mentality of just going for it kind of thing, that's the hardest part. I mean, you don't need a ton of money to start a company. You could start with no money. You could just start by it's free to start a social media account. One big thing that if there's one thing I could stress the most, I think a lot of times people spend way too much time perfecting their product rather than perfecting their market. I would much rather have a strong social media following waiting for me to release my product than have my product ready to go with no following. It's free to make a Twitter. It's free to make an Instagram. There's a lot of free ways out there to start growing. You could literally just go to a competitor's page that you think you could do a better job at, whatever they're offering, and just start manually following all of their followers. There's free Chrome extensions that do that. That doesn't cost any money to do. You could quickly see if there's a market for your idea, your product that you have in mind, rather than trying to figure out all these ways, being held back by the idea of how am I going to figure out enough money to do this. Like, you really don't need any money to start anything. Just start a following and see if people are actually interested in your product. And if they are, then you start putting things together. Once you actually, and the drive it'll be a lot easier to actually raise that money when you realize that once you release this product, there are actually people who are going to be interested and buy it if it's a paid product, or if it's some sort of free service, be interested and listen to what you have to offer.
Right. And you said that too. I think I can quote, if in the Facebook group you said, I've always strived towards building a market for my product before I have the product perfected. And I think you also said I will try building the brand before I spend lots of money and time developing my product. And I think that's a very it's a very good thing. And what you're specifically talking about seems like it's geared more towards a specific industry or line of products or services or something like that. Another way that people can do this, say you don't know exactly, you want to build a business, you don't know exactly what kind of business, you don't know if you want it to be, sneakers or something else. Another great way to do this is just to start some sort of, in addition to social media and stuff, start some sort of blog or even a podcast or something. Get your first and last name.com and start putting out some sort of content. If you're into, I don't know, if you're into developing or coding, start putting out content about that, or into some other sort of hobby or snowboarding or something like that. Start developing content around that, and you'll start to build an audience. And when you do have that audience, you can start to ask them, what are some of the things you're struggling with? If you could have one solution built for you, if there was one thing that you struggle with the most, or issue you have, or challenge you have, what would that thing be? And from that data, you can gather that and sort of figure out what sort of product or service you want to build. On top of that. But I love that concept. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I've seen myself get caught up in the past, which I always try to call myself back on, is remember that you're building. I always try to keep myself real. I need to build the company for the first customer, not your 100th. Just realize the easiest way to get this product out there for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 customers kind of thing, and then you can grow it. Don't focus on building a perfect product that'll be great for 1,000 users, because there's good chance you're not going to have 1,000 users the day you release your product. But getting a couple users here and there, you should be able to do that with your network kind of thing, getting friends using your product and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Just thinking about your immediate friendships and even family surrounding you. I mean, if you can build a product that 5 people absolutely rant and rave about, then there's 50 more people that would probably love it. And if there's 50 more people, there's 5,000 more people or 50,000 more people. And you can sort of scale from there. No, I love that, man. I learned that lesson the hard way almost a few years back now. Just basically disappeared into my home office for 3 months and built this shiny new thing that I thought everybody would want, and I didn't talk to anybody about it, and emerged and presented this thing to the world, and just launched to crickets. And come to find out, the material, like the core of what I was building, it is stuff that people wanted. But the way I was building it, the way I was packaging it, and the sort of the user experience was not how people wanted it delivered. And that would have been something that would have been so easy. I even had a somewhat of an email list before and social media, before I even got started. Maybe just a couple hundred people that would see my post or something, but that would have been enough to just simply ask. I could have just asked them, and they would probably have told me, hey, maybe try this. Like, we would rather have it this way. And I could have, I learned a lot in those 3 months too. I wouldn't take back the lesson for anything, but
yeah, no doubt. Along with tailoring your business to your first product, it's also realizing, would you buy this product? Like, you're your own best critic. If you're releasing a product and you're skeptic on whether or not people will actually want to buy it, realize that you know your company more than anyone else in the world. So you knowing everything about it, if you're not 100% sure if you would actually buy your product, go back to the drawing board and tweak it a little bit.
Yeah. So are you really into sneakers then?
I have to be because of the business I'm in. I used to buy them a lot more to wear for myself. Now I'm more of an Uggs guy in the winter kind of thing. I just like to keep it comfy.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I have like 20 pairs in my collection. Just I like to keep shoes I've done really well on. I just keep one pair for myself, kind of thing.
Right. Kind of like trophies, sort of.
Yeah, exactly.
That's sweet.
Trophy.
I do want to talk a little bit about something you'd said, the just do it concept. That can, and I agree, that can sometimes be the absolute hardest barrier for people to get over. To just, you have an idea, even a fraction of an idea, and you just get held up by all the, paralyzed by analyzation, paralyzation. What's the, there's like a rhyming phrase there that I'm not, but you're basically paralyzed because you're just stuck analyzing the idea and thinking about it. So I'd be curious to hear you talk more about that. When you do have these ideas and you're thinking, hey, I've done really well, it's time to start another company, Soul Strike. What's, I guess, going through your mind? Like, how much of what you're going to do you have figured out before you take the first step?
So I'll answer that question real quickly. So in terms of a company so it's kind of unfair to look at that company because that was my third company.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You knew what you were doing, but
I'll answer it based off like starting a company I've never had any experience before.
That was my intent. Yeah.
I think with podcasts today are huge, and I'm starting to listen to them a lot more and realize how important. I mean, you have on some of the bigger podcasts, you have people who are paid tens of thousands of dollars to do speaking gigs at these conferences who are coming on and giving that same speech that they would at the conference for free on a podcast.
Right.
And Gary Vaynerchuk, all these guys.
Right.
And I could see, if I wasn't running any businesses today, how easy it would be to just listen to podcasts all day and not do it. But I mean, I think people don't realize how much this free content is so valuable, and it's so cool to run a company alongside listening to the content kind of thing. So I think, there's a ton of people. I could see how easy it would be for myself if I was in a position where I wasn't running any businesses to just listen to podcasts all day. And I would be learning a ton, but it's what are you doing with what you're learning kind of thing. You really, right. If you're listening to this podcast today, if you're listening to any business podcast in general, you have an interest. Everyone has, even if it's just a hobby around, if you love playing sports or something simple. I mean, not not everyone has that. I mean, it's very hard to have those $1 million idea kind of thing. So just a simple passion, just start learning, just put your feet in the water kind of thing. Just do anything you can to get started. If you're listening to a podcast today, you clearly have an interest. When this podcast is over, don't go find another podcast to listen to. Go actually think of something you're going to start. And then when you get a little bump in the road, go listen to a podcast or something. I mean, it's really easy to Google like podcast about, starting my first website stuff. Like there's so much free content out there. I think I'm not saying I can't speak for other people, but I know if I was not running any companies today, I would see myself just listening to podcasts all day long rather than going out there and doing stuff. So it's the take what you learn and go actually apply it and then come back for more information, because the information we're getting, the content through these podcasts is so much more valuable if you're actually applying it to a business you're running in real life.
Yeah, I mean, I hear people say all the time, like, oh man, how cool it would be to be mentored by Tony Robbins or to have Gary Vaynerchuk as my mentor. And what people don't realize is you literally can by just going and listening to wherever they've published their content, read their books, listen to their podcast interviews, because they're saying all of the same things that they would if you were paying them $100,000 a year to say to you. They might not be meeting you exactly where you're at, but I know for somebody like Gary Vaynerchuk, he's put out enough content where you can definitely find something that applies to almost your exact same situation. And so something else you'd mentioned too is if you have any sort of interest or idea, just get started on it. I feel like one of the biggest hangups for people there, I know it was for me, is just like, okay, yes, I have XYZ interest or multiple interests. And so I could just today, I could get started on a business or some sort of project or build something around it, but it's not $1 million idea. Like everybody has this desire to right out of the gate, like create the next Facebook and just be massively successful. So I guess, what do you have to say to that?
I mean, my first company, I made $150 on, I think. I mean, I used to do lemonade stands to make, it's not one cool concept that I've always tried to work with is $10, $50 companies is a lot more valuable than one $500 company. It's a lot cooler to just get out. I mean, you leave room for growth. You can't even argue the fact that you sitting around, not like people in general sitting around trying to think of $1 million company is not as valuable as making a $100 company, because you're going to learn skills that'll help you get to that point. Right. Like we don't hear about the stuff Mark Zuckerberg did before Facebook, but I'm sure he had tons of little things he did. So it's don't get caught up in the $1 million idea. It's figure out a way to build $10, $50 businesses and then figure out which one is the most room for growth. It's like just do anything to get started. And there's so many resources nowadays. I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk's putting out daily videos on YouTube every single day. You have all these guys that are just providing so much. It's so much different than 20, 30 years ago, like when you would have been an 18-year-old guy. It's just a different time, and we're so fortunate to have that, and not enough people are taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I think for people listening, what Cameron is saying is that essentially you have no excuse.
Yes.
You don't have an excuse nowadays. You just got to get started. But it's so true. The people that we look up to today, now there are like those, like 1 out of 1,000 entrepreneurs, 1 out of 50,000 entrepreneurs, probably more like it, who have the very first thing they sort of start just ends up blowing up. And then even out of those, some of them don't even make it because they're not prepared for that kind of growth. I don't think that it's fair for anybody to expect or put that kind of pressure on yourself to have that right off the bat. I wouldn't expect that. If it happens, nice, but I wouldn't expect that. Like Cameron said, I would get started with whatever it is, and you're going to be, as you start, this $100 or $500 company or $500 companies, you're going to be learning skills and developing or building up career capital and things that you're going to be able to transfer to the next thing. And then what we were talking about earlier is just the relationships as well that you'll build. Also just the concepts, the failures that you can learn from, the stepping stones to success. But you just have to get started, and it is such a dangerous trap to know that you want to do something, know that you want to start a business, and maybe you even have a couple ideas, but to not take action on because you don't think they're refined enough or perfect enough, or you don't think it's this $1 million idea, or you think people are going to judge you or something. The defining difference, I think, between somebody who like you, Cameron, who's doing really well, and now you're still at a young age, but you have all this whole track record, and somebody who's 25 years old and still just listening to podcasts, wishing they would have, trying to figure out what idea they want to pursue, and they've been trying to figure that out for the last several years. The difference, I think, is just getting started regardless of those doubts, and not being able to getting started even though you don't have the entire vision, or you don't see every step for the next 6 months or year moving forward.
I mean, when I started my first company, the Soul Sniper one, I was literally posting my phone number in as many forums and sneaker Facebook groups as I could think of. I would have an hour phone call with a customer explaining to them everything that our company did, just to get them to buy a $25 bot for that release kind of thing. Like, it does just like stop screwing around.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many free ways to market yourself on these social media platforms. There's no point in that. And if you don't have any great ideas, but you're listening to these podcasts, like if you don't have any great ideas right now, you clearly have been listening to podcasts, so you have a lot of insight. Just start a free blog and stuff. Like, there's so many easy ways to get started. Just do something. Doing something is way better than sitting around thinking of that $1 million idea. Because by doing something, you'll have so many more opportunities come across your plate, rather than just sitting around waiting for some great idea to pop in your head.
Totally. Yeah. When I started the podcast, I think there's a few places where my phone number is actually posted. And I text and even talk on the phone with some of you guys still occasionally, but definitely in the beginning, I remember being on the phone, like, nobody was listening to this podcast. I was getting maybe 10 downloads or less a day. Sometimes I'd hit 0 days for like 9 months after I launched. But every once in a while, there would be this one kid or something that would reach out, and I'd have an hour-long phone call conversation with him, and not even make any money from that. But it was... And a lot of that, I think, too, is really loving what you do when you can really find something like work that you're innately curious about and you love to do. And that just comes with, I think, trial and error. I'm 28. I've been through a bunch of different businesses and done a ton of different stuff to get to where I am now, knowing like, okay, I've settled into this. This is me. This is what I need to be doing. Some people discover that earlier on, but you just got to get it out there and try things, and you'll eventually sort of settle into your groove. Another question I had for you, though, a popular post I did on our Facebook group was, it was about the percentage sort of between how much you think or plan, and then how much you actually do or take action. I'm curious, like, what I've said and what I try to strive for, since I tend to err more on the side of overthinking things. I shoot in a given day for 20% thinking and 80% action. I'm curious, where you might fall in there, and if you've kind of struggled with one more than the other. I mean, I have business partners too, and there tends to be like two different kinds of people in the business. There's kind of the shoot and then aim sort of person that you just take action and figure it out as you go, and then there's the aim and then shoot, whereas you're a careful planner, you're into systems, and you only pull the trigger when you're fairly certain it's going to work. What's, I guess, the balance there, and where do you fall, and maybe speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so for this new company I'm working on, that's a Spanish learning software, we sat down, we've been working on it for about a month now, so we sat down for an hour, we planned a roadmap, we had some amazing ideas, but those ideas don't matter, because we have to remember we're working on getting one customer rather than 100. Those ideas are great when we have 100 customers and we have more people to market to. It's easier to roll out products. So you obviously have to spend some time thinking about future things, even in the moment. You have to think about what you're going to do that day, the things you want to work on. But I'm all about doing overthinking. Obviously there's a lot more thinking involved when you're actually getting the company off the ground. But once the company's off the ground kind of thing, we're literally just going to be cold emailing all these people, like sales calls. It's just go back to the basics of how to get customers kind of thing. So I think 2080 is a good number. I would probably be pretty close to that number. Yeah.
That's neat. As long as we're talking about Gary Vaynerchuk, he has another sort of phrasing for it. He talks about having the clouds and the dirt is the difference he talks about there. And if you think of sort of a landscape. You know, you've got the dirt in the bottom and the clouds at the top, and you can have your head in the clouds, you know, for a while, kind of seeing the view, strategizing, coming up with the vision, thinking, planning. You know, you've got the bird's eye view. But what's more important and what you need to be doing most of the time is you need to be in the dirt and be working in the dirt, actually the nitty gritty and getting stuff done.
I like that.
Yeah. Just for people out there listening. Well, cool, man. Really quick though, I am curious. So I'm noticing a trend here with the companies. Why the sudden switch to the language learning platform? I mean, is this more in line with your goal of eventually, you know, reforming the public school system, or?
I mean, so the company's actually really cool. My partner who goes to Northwestern brought it to me, and it's a program that deconjugates verbs and worksheets. So in all of Spanish learning, Spanish 1, Spanish 2, Spanish 3, all the way up through college, conjugating verbs is a big thing. So I saw the problem, which was teachers are spending 30, 40 minutes creating a document, and this program could do it for you in seconds. And now you could use any form of text. You could have current events in there. It creates a lot of test security, all this cool added stuff. So the biggest thing in any company is like, does it solve a problem? How big is the problem? We realized that colleges have lots of money to spend, kind of thing. So that was a nice addition. And then, I mean, so to answer your question, it goes both ways. The company saw, regardless of what I wanted to do with the school system in my life, I would have still worked on this company because it solves a problem and it's a really cool product. But with what I want to do in the school system, it's just an extra chair. I mean, I'll be growing a network in the educational space, kind of thing. So working with colleges directly and then meeting people in the business, kind of thing. It's just the cherry on top.
Right on.
So it's a nice bonus.
Yeah. So I would be curious though, in talking about reforming or changing, doing something to change up the public school system and your sort of passion for that. If you could expound a little bit more on that, and maybe some of the future plans, or just what you're generally thinking of doing. How are you going to tackle that?
Sure. So if you look at the most successful companies in, say, 1950 compared to, there's going to be a lot of companies that were in the top 20 that aren't even around anymore today because people don't adjust to the changes in society. So when you see the school system, it's been pretty similar the whole way through. There hasn't been a lot of change. So, the first thing that I didn't even understand, the first thing I didn't understand when I switched from Montessori to public school was the fact, this No Child Left Behind Act, that every single kid in my class was working on the same thing. If I understood Unit 4.2 in class today, I still had to sit there for 40 more minutes waiting for the teacher to go over everything, even though I knew what was happening. So the biggest thing is everyone works at their own pace. Some kids are better at English, some kids are better at math. Let kids excel in that. Let them go all the way through. I think hands-on learning is a big thing that Montessori offers, especially at a young age. It's so important because it's the programming of your brain, kind of thing. So I think there isn't enough. At the high school I went to, there was more of it. There was a student tutoring room where you could go for help. So that was cool. But I think there needs to be a lot more. Before you ask a teacher a question, ask a student, because then the student works on their social skills, explaining what's going on, kind of thing, and you're learning to ask other people than the person that is the authority figure in the classroom. And then the biggest thing is just this memorization thing. Like, Google is Google. If I am confused about anything, I could just Google it and find an answer. There's no point in memorizing each one. If you're going to go into a math field where you need to have formulas memorized, sure, but calculators don't make mistakes, stuff like that. There's a lot of things that I think it's just mostly outdated. It needs an update, kind of thing. So bringing a lot more technology into play, realizing that Google, it's only going to get stronger as more information comes into the world with more people in the world, kind of thing. So there's a lot of things that are being memorized that are pretty pointless in my opinion. And I know the school system does work well for some people. I'm very business minded, so there's a lot of business things I want to implement, but I know business isn't for everyone. Being an entrepreneur isn't for everyone. So you kind of have to find the middle, what works best for everyone. But I know for a fact that the school system is definitely holding kids back right now. And I have ideas right now. I know tomorrow I won't be able to change the school system. It's growing my network, growing the brand around my name, people listening to what I have to say. It'll be a lot easier to make changes when the time comes rather than just trying. It's what I said before. It's creating a market rather than creating the perfect product. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but I know I want to do it. So I'd rather start growing my bankroll, make more money, start growing a following around my brand, get all these things happening first, and then it'll be a lot easier to roll it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, love it, man.
Thank you.
Are you going to go to college?
Right now it's not in my, I'll have a GED online for my high school education. So it's something that's always in the back of my mind. Right now I don't plan on it. I don't see if I find a cool university, a small university that's tailored towards businesses more, like a very small university. I found some universities that let you run your business for credit. You learn around. I'm all about learning more things. I love learning and stuff like that. So if I can find a platform that lets me continue working on my business while I'm learning more about business at the same time, kind of thing, that'd be awesome. But from my experiences, I've realized that I've learned the most by just doing it hands-on through trial and error, running real companies. So as of right now, I don't plan on going to college.
Right. That definitely makes sense. Well, Cameron, man, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I'm looking at the time now, and we're getting a little long here, but there's still a lot of questions I wanted to ask you, so we might have to have you on again for one of our shorter segments or something like that.
Sure.
For now, there's 2 more questions I want to ask you that I like to ask every guest that comes on the show. Do you have any parting advice for any of our listeners who are thinking of dropping out of school to start their entrepreneurial journey, but they haven't made that step yet?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is make sure you have a clear set plan, like a vision, whatever it is. When I dropped out, it went to my head very quickly. I thought I was this big shot kind of thing. For the first probably 6 months, I would just literally play video games. I would get nothing done. So doing that has helped me. I wouldn't change that at all. I learned a ton through going through that process, realized how much time I actually had and how I was not using it to my advantage whatsoever. But I think you really, when you're on your own, my parents weren't going to save me kind of thing. Like, it was my decision to drop out. So I had to stick by what I wanted to do. So yeah. I think the biggest thing is make sure you have make sure your days will be full and stuff like that. You're learning all that stuff. Have a set plan on what exactly you want to do, because I clearly did not do a good enough job of doing that in the beginning, and I learned from my mistakes. So make sure you have a clear plan on exactly what you want to do when you drop out. It's not, dropping out doesn't just automatically make your companies do better kind of thing. Like, there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah, right on. And how about any parting advice for any of our listeners who have already dropped out and who are already on their entrepreneurial journey?
For sure. I think the biggest thing that, looking back, I did not do a good job of was growing my network. When you have time to meet with people during the day, if you're homeschooling, if you've dropped out, locally around you, Skype calls, it's really easy to connect nowadays. Growing your network is you're going to meet investors, you're going to meet potential business partners. There's just so many things that will be so valuable down the road that you might not need right now. But a lot of the people I'm meeting right now aren't necessarily going to make this business do extremely better, but who knows? It's what I said before, the $100 freelancer, who knows where that'll turn into. You don't know where this connection with someone could turn into down the road.
Yeah. Love it, man. What's the best way that people can connect with you at this point?
They could just go to my website, CameronZoub.com, Z as in zebra, O-U-B as in boy. They could just go to the website and I'll have all my information on there.
Right on. Well, Successful Dropouts, you are the average of the 5 people you hang around the most, and you've been hanging out with Kylan and Cameron today, learning what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. For everything we talked about today, head over to successfuldropout.com and type Cameron into the search bar, and the show notes will pop right up. And as always, stay hungry, stay foolish.